Hey, I'm Shana Meyerson with YOGAthletica in Los Angeles, California, here today to teach you Supta Kurmasana, reclining tortoise pose, by way of Kurmasana, just tortoise pose. So, these are very deep stretches, therefore, stretches you want to do at the end of your practice, or towards the end of your practice, obviously before your closing series, for example, but after you're completely warm. I'm going to start off with a little hip opening series that I always do whenever I'm putting my legs behind my head. I'm not going to hold it for a long time. I just want you to understand the movements, and then when you do them on your own, do them longer, okay? Like a minimum 5 breaths, but preferably longer than that. So any day that I'm putting legs behind my head, this is towards the end of my practice, in my last stretching series before Paschimottanasana and into my closing series. So I take one leg and cross it on my knee. Now, this foot is right at the edge of my leg. I take the fuzz off my foot, and then you can use this leg, the leg that's on the ground, to sort of moderate the depth of the stretch. So if you want to go deeper, you pull the foot in towards your hips, and you compact the pose. So I've mentioned this in other videos, but you know when you've arrived in this pose, when you can pick your nose with your big toe. Okay, so just for the record, I am already warm, so that's why I could sort of skip forward through these and hold them for not so long. Once I feel like this pose is all yummy and delicious in my body, I slide the bottom leg back out and come into a spinal twist. So, trying to get as much as I can the back of my shoulder to the sole of my foot. Now on this one, my primary action, quite honestly, is the twist and the hip opening. So where this extended leg is in space doesn't make that much of a difference, okay? So I'm just going to show you from a different angle. It's just foot to armpit, and I come into my twist. So once I feel like that's all warmed up and ready to go, I come into Yoga-Dandasana. So, I teach this in a previous video, sorry, let me turn this way, as leaning over and putting your hand through the triangle, okay? So that's one method, and I actually prefer this method because it's a lot easier on the shoulder. But if you, and on my ankle, quite frankly, but if you want to take it deeper, come in, you really got to get the back of your shoulder to the edge of your foot and wrap your arm on top of your leg instead of through it, oh hello, and then you clasp behind it this way. So it's just, honestly, it's not going to make a tremendous difference on your hip, but it really makes a tremendous difference on your shoulder. And remember that when it comes to leg behind head, oddly enough, it's the shoulders that are going to make the difference. Okay, once I've got that established, I give it a little LBH warm up. So, extend my leg out just to sort of neutralize the hip a little bit. And as my shoulder squishes under my knee, my leg goes up and over behind my head. From here, this leg behind head, you want to hold it as long as comfortable. I like to take it into the balance. You absolutely don't have to do this, but this is a nice one, by the way, for just adding in some core to the stretch, because I need to use my core to balance. Okay, but you can absolutely just leave your leg on the ground. You can put it like this, you can put it like this. You can do what you want. Okay, so both sides, of course. Kurmasana. How do we get into Kurmasana? Here's the thing about this pose that I think a lot of people sort of misread. A lot of people, because the legs are apart, think that Kurmasana is a big splitty pose. It's really not. It's actually quite quite narrow. A lot like Tadasana, which is not legs way out. There are variations where you could take it that way, but really it's legs in to contain the pose and lengthen. So, depending on your level of flexibility, some people prefer to have their feet off the mat because they'll slide more easily. If you're more flexible, maybe leave them on the mat because you're probably going to wind up narrower. But remember that when my legs go out, they're going out that way, not out that way. I have to, in order to get into this pose, get my shoulders under my knees again. Sometimes it helps to actually lift your feet off the floor, because that's going to give you a lot more mobility in the legs, and then you can just put the hands down and the feet down. If balancing on your butt is not your forte, you can absolutely do it with your feet on the floor by squishing in this way. It's just a little harder to get deep. So I'm going to opt for the former rather than the latter, but you could actually and absolutely do the latter. In fact, I'll do the latter after I do the former. How about that? I'll hit all my bases. So I squish my shoulder under my knee. So when I say shoulder, I'm not talking triceps. I'm pretty good with anatomy, and I do know the difference, and this is not a shoulder. This, however, is. So I take it way up, put my hands down for an easy landing, boop, and from here, slide my hands behind me. My hands are now sort of an anchor. As I slide my feet, remember, not out to the sides, but in essence forward. Maybe you could say to the corners of my mat. And what happens on this pose is that my knees actually press down into my shoulders to get that pancakey effect. And if you want to go full throttle, extend all the way. So yoga toe point, meaning pointing through your feet and flexing through your toes. And now I've just got so much pressure on my shoulders that it really helps to flatten me out into a nice flat turtle. Because who doesn't love a flat turtle? Remember also that your neck needs to stay long. To come out, I can just pull my arms out the middle. Sometimes coming out is super awkward. Okay, so neck long, okay? So that you're not like doing a nose plant. We don't have a lot of nose plants in yoga. In fact, I don't think we have any. But chin on the floor, that's a thing. Okay, let's try this without taking the feet off the floor. So I come in and I squish as far as I can. You'll see I'm not quite as far in there, but I'm still fine. Arms go back. And same action as I take my legs forward, point my feet, and flex my toes. So this is a really, and then I slide my arms through. This is a really fiery pose on my legs. It's almost more like of a strength play than a flexibility play when you straighten those legs all the way. But remember, you don't have to. You can absolutely leave your heels on the floor. Okay. So you've got Kurmasana. How do we get Supta Kurmasana? Well, legs behind head requires a lot of shoulder squishy underneathness, which means I always take this from sitting first, so that I can guarantee maximum depth. Okay, remember we warmed up our hips, right? I'll start with my easy leg, my left leg. So if you're newer to something, I highly recommend always starting with your easy leg. And remember, first it's shoulder squishes way under. Make sure your foot is not facing forward, but across. Why? Because my head is over here, not over here. Because if I could just sort of crosses across me like a roller coaster seatbelt, all I have to do is take that roller coaster seatbelt, how it lifts up and goes over, and boom. My foot is behind my head. Now look how my entire shoulder is well in front of my knee. This is key, especially if you want to get the bind. Okay? So if I don't have a big squish, look where my shoulder is now. You see how the shoulder is actually, let me turn more, how my shoulder is sort of behind the leg instead of in front of it. You really want to make sure that you have it in front. Then once that's secured, I take my second leg, bring it in. Again, trying to get my shoulder way under, and like a little push-up. It's a very easy push-up. I go down. Now there's a problem here. You see how my feet are not on the floor? They won't be on the floor because my head is in the way. So in this pose, I'm going to slide my feet a little bit forward, so that they hit the floor. Then my arms can go behind me, palms up, or as long as I have my shoulders way under, I may be able to get that bind. So you see my head is just behind my feet. My legs are way behind my shoulders, and I bind up at the, right just above the hip. To come out, I can unwrap my legs, and voila! It's a miracle, folks. You actually can get yourself out of these poses once you get into them. I know sometimes it looks like you can't. Anyway, you know that I've got plenty of videos to help you to open your hamstrings and your hips if you need some help with that. I've got a number of videos just to help you get those legs a little more securely behind your head. And for those of you who want to go super pro, be sure to check out my Venmo channel of full-length classes. That way you get the whole hour and a half warm-up before coming into deep stuff like this. I'm Shana Meyerson with YOGAthletica in Los Angeles, California, wishing you an awesome day.